Hey guys, if you're anything like me, and I know you are, then you're a big fan of Final Fantasy. I've been playing Final Fantasy games since I was a kid, and the series has only gotten bigger and better since then. Case in point, War of the Visions. If you haven't heard about it, War of the Visions Final Fantasy Brave Exvius is a tactical RPG game for mobile, developed by Gumi and Square Enix themselves, that has all the gameplay and depth that you love from Final Fantasy Tactics wrapped up in an amazingly fun gacha game. You can summon characters from the world of Final Fantasy and use them to create competitive and powerful teams to take down your enemies. There are tons of unique classes with their own skill trees and abilities, full voice acting, amazing art, and engaging PvP. You heard me right, I said Final Fantasy PvP. So if that's piqued your interest, then I highly encourage you to tune in to the official 2023 War of the Visions PvP Championship, the Heinler Cup, which will be live streamed on May 20th. You'll be able to see the pros going at it live with professional commentary and elite tactical gameplay. The competitive scene for War of the Visions is electric, and they host tournaments regularly. So if you've ever been interested in Final Fantasy or War of the Visions, now is the best time to tune in and see what all the rage is about. Just use the QR code on screen and the links in the description down below to join the Discord and find out more info on this tournament. And remember, that's May 20th, so mark that date down so you can catch the epic Heinler Cup livestream. Hello everyone, Silveroni of G&A Reviews here, and today we have a bit of an update video. Now, I'm a few days or weeks late to this one, but I spent the last half month replacing my Stone Age PC, so I'll chalk the lateness up to that. Either way, this is one update I just had to talk about because, in my opinion, it significantly changes the viability of a few fan-favorite servants, specifically Mordred and Caster Gilgamesh. Now, if you haven't been following the JP news, a bunch of servants have received strengthening buffs from the recent FGO Arcade collab. Most of the upgrades in the batch were very strong, including one that really upgraded Nightingale's Angel's Cry skill into a mini hero creation. But by far the two biggest winners had to be Mordred and Gilgamesh, whose buffs have elevated them to a whole new tier. So if you're curious to see what those buffs are and why they're so good, then do me a favor and hit that like button, subscribe, and ring my bell so you can catch all of these spotlight and update videos as they come out, and you can help out the channel. With Lost Belt 6 only a few weeks away, and anniversary and summer shortly after that, you best believe I have a ton of new videos coming out. So with that said, before we get to the two big winners of the strengthening lotto, I do want to talk about one honorable mention: Nero. Nero has finally received a buff to her Imperial Privilege. Unfortunately, this wasn't the kind of buff that guarantees the activation. It's still just 60%, but she now receives a very nice 30% buff to Arts card effectiveness on a low cooldown, as well as a 20-30 effect of generating 10 crit stars every turn. These are both guaranteed effects, so they'll activate even if the attack and defense buffs both miss. And this is something that Nero has desperately needed: a guaranteed damage buff that isn't dependent on the conditions of the battlefield or a coin flip. 30% may not seem like a lot, and it's not, but it does help Nero significantly with her NP gain, and it gives her something reliable to fall back on in case you get incredibly unlucky and miss the coin flip while fighting in the middle of a desert. The star generating also helps her crit a fair bit more often and just adds to her DPS. The real value of this skill though is when using Nero in conjunction with a support who can buff her success rate, like Lan Ling or Ozzy, because when combined with the attack buff from Imperial Privilege, Nero's sustained DPS raises dramatically. Of course, this only works in hyper-specific team comps and under specific circumstances, but at least it now gives Nero a more defined niche to work within, so overall, a very strong buff. Strong, but not game-changing. If we want to talk game-changing buffs, then let's talk Caster Gil. Gil has received a buff to King's Return. Now, on top of the party-wide 100% boost to star generating, it also charges the party's NP gauge by 20% and Gil's NP by another 30%. That means that Gil now has a full 50% NP charge for himself and 20% for the party, a la Helena. This helps Gil out in two major ways. Firstly, it turns him into a powerful farmer in his own right. With a 50% NP battery, he can essentially loop if he needs to, and this gives him a newfound home in arts farming teams as one of the better choices for offensive casters. But this buff also significantly helps him out as a support. He can now act as an NP battery in both stall and farming teams, and essentially just be a better Lan Ling in most cases. I believe this dramatically raises Caster Gil's value as a support, and makes him arguably the best SR support available to an arts team. The only downside of this buff, and why I don't consider it the best of the batch, is that the cooldown is still really long at 7 turns, so it's harder to get use out of this in prolonged battle. So with that said, the winner of the best buff award this time around has to go to Mordred, which is saying a lot because her last strengthening was also pretty damn strong. But this time around, Mordred has received a buff to her mana burst, changing it to Knight of the Crimson Thunder, which by the way is such a badass name, and I can definitely picture Mordred running around calling herself that. With the upgrade, Mordred's Buster buff now lasts for 3 hits rather than 1 turn, and she also gets a 3-turn buff to both her attack damage and her Buster crit damage. The damage modifiers are very nice all around, and the fact that such a strong skill is only on a 5-turn cooldown is just ridiculous. This buff makes Mordred's Noble Phantasm one of the strongest AoEs in the Saber class, second only to Artoria herself. But what really makes the skill so strong now is that it extends Mordred's mana burst for essentially 3 turns, making it perfect for Buster looping. Now Mordred can clear every wave consistently without any drop off in damage, and in fact she can double buff herself in Vich teams thanks to that cooldown reduction, basically giving herself a 100% Buster damage up and 40% extra attack up just from this skill alone. This upgrade easily pushes Mordred into the same tier as Artoria and Ibuki when it comes to farming sabers. And those are my thoughts on the latest servant strengthenings. Keep in mind that we will be getting an SSR selector ticket this year, so for those of you who are on the fence about Mordred, you may want to consider picking her up after the latest buff. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and consider subscribing if you really enjoyed the video. Join the party over on our Discord, chill with us on Twitch, and follow us on Twitter. And I'll see you all in the next Servant Spotlight. So running out. Later.